You're here at Let's Be Clear, and I am Senator James Sanders Jr., and I named the show Let's Be Clear because we live in a day of fuzzy things. Everybody around us, you ask them a straight question, you get a fuzzy answer. Imagine if we had one place to go to where we could get straight answers to straight questions. Well, Pilgrim, you have arrived. And we are going to go into one of the toughest questions plaguing the world today, not even America, my friends, the world. And we can, I mean, you have so many names to call this one. You can call it the disappearing women. You can call it so many different things. But here's the problem, my friends. Everyone knows that there is a glass ceiling, and everyone knows that we allegedly have been trying to batter this glass ceiling and break this ceiling forever. One of the reasons that people come up and say that women are not promoted at the level that they're supposed to, that women do not receive the money that they should, is because they don't participate in the labor market as much as some others. Now, one of the main reasons they don't participate in the past has been childcare and dealing with the question of children and perhaps parent care, seniors. Now, COVID has come, well, the first waves of COVID have come, and they have really devastated everyone, where everyone was forced to work from home, those who could, except for the essential workers, of course. And now they're blowing the whistle. We can all come out from under our beds and go back to work. And many women are not coming back. Now, that, I mean, that is a long-term problem, my friends, in terms of the things that I just spoke of, in terms of America as a whole, the talent, the incredible talent. So the question becomes, why is this? Now, I have brought two of the most important people working on this issue, one local and one that we'll have to import her. We'll have to bring her to New York if we can get her from the University of Akron. But we're going to speak first to Cecilia Venosta-Wiygul, who is the president of the Center for the Women of New York, a center that I've known of for quite a while. And they are empowering women to achieve full equality since 1987. Well, women should have had full equality since 18. Well, they always should have. Well, there I go thinking again. But enough of that. Cecilia, I'm glad to see you on the show. What's happening with women? Where are you guys? Who knows? Do you know?
We're everywhere. Thank you so much, Senator, for having me. We have seen, and I know we're talking about how COVID has affected women in the workforce. I feel that, and I think we all agree that COVID has affected women disproportionately in many aspects of our lives. And yes, there's so many women that had to stop working, and reasons vary, but the main reasons are childcare. When schools closed, we saw a lot of women suffering, having lost a job and not being able to keep up with jobs, and also like health, mental health, stress were the main reasons why people had to stop working, and it affected every class, every level of our society. It's not one group of women, but we get phone calls from all over the city, from like a professional, well-educated women, low wage, you know, women, and everyone has been affected, and everyone has been losing jobs. And women now are wondering whether or not they want to go back, and if it is worth it, and if they can, and if they will be taken back.
My. I should have allowed you a moment to say what your center is and what do you do with women and others?
So the Center for the Women of New York, as you said, was founded in 1987 by our beloved founder, Anne Jowin, who we lost right before the start of the pandemic. She founded the center because she saw, like one of the main reasons was pay inequality. And the center helps women in different aspects of their lives. And one is career development, jobs. We do have a job fair, career fair conference, excuse me, every year. We did skip it during the pandemic because our own women were struggling and we had to close our offices. And Darwin's dream was to have a sanctuary, one place, one building dedicated to women in New York. And she fought 18 years against, in court to the city to get that building. At some point she lost at the beginning, and we were able to have a grand opening right before the pandemic. The goal was to have a sanctuary, a place where we could have a little bit of a, women's history, and we do resume writing. We connect women with Workforce One with one of our partners. We have a legal team that guides women in legal challenges. We have support groups that are led by social workers. We have a caregiver support group that's for those of us who take care of elderly family members or loved ones. And we do workshops. Like we did a parenting workshop in the middle of the pandemic, and that was one of our most popular workshops last year because we did talk about juggling all work and family, children. We do have financial literacy programs, workshops to educate women.
Sounds like you are doing quite a bit. Have you considered doing any type of workshop on the vanishing women, as I will call it?
So we just had a board meeting recently, last Sunday, and we decided that our focus is going to be this year, starting in September, job reentry and career development. So yes, we are thinking that. And 2 days ago, when you contacted me, I said we had to do something um, before our career conference addressing this issue. And so thank you for your push and your input. We're sending a survey now to find out more of it, because as you said, it is a mystery. And unfortunately, I wish I had that answer. Like, what is happening? How is this happening still today? But we want to learn from women. So I would love for this survey to be responded by like many people in New York and find out what is going on.
Well,
That's a very complex issue.
yes, it is, and we're going to explore that one. Now, you have the advantage of knowing that I co-author. Well, actually, I'm the author. I'm the father of the MWBE laws in New York City and New York State, the Minority of Women-Owned Business Enterprise. So I have been watching the progress of women a long time and fighting for it, along with the progress of others, of course. And I am stunned and scared of this trend that we have. Now, I'm grateful that we have Dr. Amanda Weinstein, who is the associate professor of the economics department at the University of Akron, and that, of course, is Ohio, as we say here. So under those conditions, I'm hoping that Dr. Weinstein, you have studied this, or at least have been aware. Now, am I being over paranoid to say that this is going to hurt women in this battle against the glass ceiling, or is there something else going on that I don't understand?
You're absolutely right. So, what we see in recessions are that people who try and find jobs during recessions, people that lose their jobs during recessions, they often face what we call this wage scarring. And basically, this wage scarring is like a scar on their wages that lasts for their entire career. And so, you're absolutely not paranoid to be worried about the people that lost jobs are going to have a hard time finding jobs for one, and many of them might find jobs that are lower paid than what they had before the pandemic became or before the pandemic started. And so that is a big concern for anyone that lost their jobs and was disproportionately affected by the pandemic.
Well, wait a minute. Then why are they not coming forward? Perhaps your cat knows in the background. Uh, God willing, the cat won't tell us. Uh, if they do, please sell me that cat. So under those conditions, why on this planet wouldn't they come back into the market quickly? Why are they not returning?
So we see that women are still struggling to find childcare, and childcare is a big reason. I need a road to get to my job, but I also need childcare to get to my job. And so childcare truly is infrastructure, just like the buildings, just like roads, just like bridges, all the construction we see, it's infrastructure, and we desperately need that infrastructure. And at the same time, we see the value in roads. It is right in front of our eyes. But we have a harder time seeing the value of childcare. And in fact, we tend to devalue childcare and we devalue the work that women do in childcare. Childcare workers are mostly women, and we don't value that as highly as we do building a road or building a bridge, but it is absolutely just as necessary in our economy today. And so now we have an issue. We have women's work, childcare, education, healthcare that tends to be devalued because women do it. And we
And
don't,
lower pay.
you got it, right? So now we're saying, hey, we really want you to come back to work, but we don't want to pay you. So we hear a lot about labor shortages. Why aren't people coming back to work? But really, what I want to hear about are wage shortages. Why aren't employers raising wages, right? We always hear about teacher shortages, we hear about nursing shortages. Raise the wages, right? And that's actually something that I teach my freshman economics students, right? If you have a shortage, there's a way employers can fix it, and it's by raising the wages.
I mean, if we accept that this is a capitalist country, and we should accept that, if we accept that this is a capitalist country, one of the chief market determinants is wage. One of the chief things that you can use is a question of wage. I mean, you can do some things to make the living or the working conditions better, but your main tool is wage. And you're right, we're not hearing enough. We are hearing of still the battle over $15 an hour, and it's not coming across as a wage. As a matter of fact, the right wing is getting out there and saying that the problem is unemployment, that we are too generous. That could it? Okay, you're an economist. Perhaps you can help us. Is it possible that the unemployment that folk are receiving, the added benefits, women are enjoying, using, um, are using it more? Could that be the problem?
So I would say the unemployment benefits we have right now are giving women and people using them more market power. So what
Yes.
we have is we have markets with an imbalance of market power, and it tends to be employers, especially large employers, that have more market power. And what employers do when they have more market power is they use it to their own advantage,
Yes.
right? So it's to their own advantage to hire someone at the lowest wage possible because they make more money. Now, the problem is when you have imbalances of market power, they can do it to a point that is actually inefficient for markets. And so we could have inefficiently low wages being pushed down by this imbalance in market power. And so what unemployment benefits can do is actually provide workers with more market power and start to put them more at an even playing field. And so that lets them say, you know what, I'm not going to come work for wages that are inappropriate for my skill level. You're going to have to pay my skill level. And so it gives them that negotiating power that they didn't have before.
But doesn't it also lead the market to automation? to using other cost-cutting methods? Couldn't it also lead to that?
So we would see higher automation as wages go up in any industry where you can automate. And we would see this as automation gets cheaper. So even if there was no higher minimum wage, as automation got cheaper, as prices get cheaper over time, when we look at even the handheld calculators we have, when we look at computers, right, as this technology gets cheaper, right, then that minimum wage effect is actually less. And so we would see employers be using automation anyway, especially for jobs that can be easily automated. And this tends to be manufacturing type jobs, less so for service jobs.
Mm-hmm. Now, Cecilia, what do you hear? I mean, is this a national problem, or is New York immune to this? I mean, this is the Empire State, and this is the city that never, or used to never sleep. COVID put us to sleep, I must admit. Isn't that interesting? But are you seeing this too? And wait a minute, Cecilia, what do you recommend if you're seeing this?
So absolutely, wages should go up, and we do see it definitely. New York is a very expensive city to live in. We're seeing a lot of people who are relocating or getting phone calls because people have to deal with that, with relocation, asking where can we go, where are the resources, and like rent is a big problem right now. Um, and people could not afford to pay the rent. And that's like I can't emphasize enough childcare. Childcare is very expensive. If you don't have a job and you're looking for a job, how do you look for a job with like having to care for your children? So as Amanda said, infrastructure includes that, like a system where, and I'm very thankful for the 3K that's being launched this year. I think that's very important. But I think that's not enough. Like we have to find more solutions and how to make it affordable and like facilitate. Like there are many children that don't have access also to education, and mothers are standing in. I'm also PTA president, and I represent my district and in the chancellor's parent council. And I hear like we're fortunate that my district doesn't have as much as this problem, but I hear from a lot of parents the lack of access. So infrastructure there too, making education accessible for kids, for families, is extremely important. The,
Well, I was about to make the argument that this had more to do with social class, that this had to do with the more elite women, the wealthier women. However, the issue of childcare is more acute with the poorer women. Uh, Richer women may have more options, and are we seeing any class differences? Cecilia first, and then Amanda. Are we seeing any class differences in this problem? And Rachel, for that matter.
so the problem affects everyone. However, as you said, richer women have the option of not working, of taking vacation, and mm, they can even relocate easier in an easier way. Where women don't have that option, it's harder to relocate. It's they cannot live with one income per house. There are many single parents are suffering a lot. I've seen parents crying at school asking for help, and it affects poor people more. And I'm concerned about those folks that don't have the option. I mean, I don't want to minimize how this pandemic has affected every single woman, every single person, but there are some that have options and some that don't. I mean, I myself do this work as a volunteer. I have the option of doing this, and I'm very thankful for it. There are people who don't have that option, and I'm very concerned about that.
Mhm. Dr. Weinstein, what do you see? Is this primarily a question of class, and is it does race play a factor in this?
Absolutely. So there we're looking at the location of quality daycares and the cost. So it's not just about location, it's also about the cost. So we have maps showing childcare deserts across the nation. So we know that people don't have quality childcare near them in many places across the United States. But even for people that have it near them, they might not be able to afford it because it is expensive, right? We kind of expected about college, but we don't really, nobody kind of tells you when you're pregnant, guess what? That kid's going to be, more expensive than college in some areas for daycare. And so then that leaves you with a network potentially of family or of neighbors. And you could have, richer women who have mothers who are retired or weren't in the labor force, where when you have a multi-generational household that where there everyone is working to get by, you can't just leave your child with grandma who, don't worry, she's retired and got to retire early. So you have basically we have a system where any place where we have a hole in our social safety net, women tend to be the ones that have to figure out a way to patch that hole, whether it's not a good enough safety net for childcare, or whether it's paid leave, or what we saw this in the pandemic is really highlight the fact that women are our safety net. That if we don't have the safety net in place, women step out of that workforce and they take care of people. Women spend more time volunteering. Cecilia talked about, volunteering our time, right? Why do we have women putting so much unpaid volunteer time? Because we have so many holes in our safety net that other countries, developed countries, the most developed countries in the nation have. If you think about healthcare, childcare, all of these things, women are sitting there patching these holes that we have.
Very interesting. Cecilia, you wanted to get in here.
Yeah, and if I may, I felt that like what Amanda said earlier regarding the values of our society and what we value in the workforce. I feel that at this time when everyone's struggling, kindness and many qualities that, and many men have these qualities too. I don't mean to separate and divide, but women have skills that would be extremely valuable to find solutions to many of the problems that we have now. And I think we're missing out by not looking at that and not valuing those skills, like bringing people together in social skills.
Well, why aren't men disappearing uh, in those numbers? Why is it simply women? Cecilia, you first.
Well, we talked about nurses and teachers wages, right? And again, I feel that we keep repeating ourselves, but there are many jobs that are done, like caregiving jobs, especially, that are being done by women, but they are not valued enough. So men work in different areas, and maybe those skills are more valued in our society. But I think we need both. We don't need one more than other. We need both, and if we make it equal, we will be in a much better place. Our economy, our jobs, our families.
Okay. Dr. Weinstein, why aren't men disappearing in the same numbers?
So we see that men's labor force participation rates right now are still lower than pre-pandemic levels. We're still missing men, just like we're missing women. We're just missing a whole lot of women because they were the people in especially service jobs and people-related jobs, jobs that were growing before the pandemic, jobs that were especially important. Cities that had higher levels of these people skills, actually, what I found is that they recover more quickly from a recession. So when we don't have women in these jobs that have these people skills, right, we are going to expect a longer recovery. And that longer recovery is going to affect both men and women. And what we see is that labor force participation rates have been stagnating for women even before the pandemic. So we have had these kind of cracks in our economy that we just haven't quite noticed. We see labor force stagnating for women, but also going down for men. And I think we have an economy now that's very different than 100 years ago. Before, when we had a single breadwinner and we didn't have to worry about daycare, right? We didn't notice the stresses that not having daycare, for example, would have. But as our economy has changed, most households are now two earners, right? We have a very different economy. And that means things like childcare and things like paid leave matter a whole lot more now than they did 100 years ago. And this pandemic really showed this bright light on cracks that were already there, that we don't have an economy set up for working parents now, men and women.
Mhm. I am trying to figure out more reasons. I would add to that that men still don't see themselves as a primary child care caregiver, nor the primary adult caregiver. We still have that sexism in society. So therefore, these are not their roles or the roles they see themselves. And I agree with Cecilia that the jobs for men across the board are usually more paid better than jobs for that women. In fact, let me get rid of those words. Jobs that are mostly men. There you go. Because there's no jobs for men and jobs for women. It's jobs that are mostly men are paid better than jobs that are mostly women. And the same is true in terms of race. So I would argue that they're being paid better, or by and large, or in comparison, they're being paid better, so they have less reason. Some people are calling this a strike, that in one sense, the workers are on strike. They're saying, we do not accept the pay, and the bosses are going crazy in this period where they want to call it anything but the issue, and they are really making it and fighting this. And several states, of course, have gotten rid of. They said that they would not take the extra unemployment money because they want to use starvation to drive these workers back to work. Cecilia, what is your, all right, by the powers invested in me, we have switched places. You are now the state senator. What do you come up with to bring, not lure, but bring women back into the market? What are you coming up with?
I feel that if I had a solution, I would be a city council.
I agree. You wouldn't settle for just simply, you're right. You're the governor. You're the guy.
So I absolutely agree with you. Sexism still exists. I feel that we've come a long way. But we fixed some areas, right? Like we were concerned decades ago about women having access to jobs that only men had access to. But we forgot to look at women are still doing everything at the house. Like women are calling the babysitter. Women are booking, like a class for the children, taking them to sports and all that. Like women are still doing all that. So it got equal at the job level, like not equal because we're still getting paid less, and the percentage of women is still smaller in most, like in many areas in the workforce. But when you go to a playground, you see moms pushing strollers and maybe a couple of that, which is amazing. I love to see that. But we need to see more of that. We need to see more equality and like equity in that area and the house. If both parents are working, why is mom doing most of the work at home? And I think we have to work on that, and we have to listen to people on like how, as what you're doing now, right? Like what do we do to fix that? I think it's education, and one program that we're thinking about bringing is to educate boys. and girls on this, because it starts when we're very young. We see this. Our children see mom doing all this. They, like, most of them don't see that, you know, planning every meal during the day. So it is hard because most of the education and the values come from home. So it's a vicious circle. But I think education is very important, and as we are working in the Department of Education to change curriculum in terms of like having representation of races and gender, like we have to work more on that, more on education. I think that's like very important.
Well, as an aside, for several years, I was a single father, and the stigma that a man is going to get hit with, and the lack of resources that a man is going to get hit with, not to not to mention, I was not trained in these things. I had to really. I grew up in a kind of sexist family, and suddenly I'm thrust in this road. I was able to do everything except I couldn't figure out how to braid my daughter's hair. I just couldn't. And my mother and my sister said, don't you ever try that again. It was that bad. But I could do everything else. Well, we've come a long way. I guess I would learn to braid by now. But I have powers, Dr. Weinstein. And among my powers, I have the ability to switch seats with people. And I have now switched seats with you. You are the elected official. Uh, and you are the first woman. There you go. You're the first woman president. And it's taken too long, but that's all right. That's all right. You're here now. And all of us have gotten serious for change. We're going to work on the issue of women. What should we do in this crisis? How do we bring women back into the market?
Hands down, this is an easy one for me. I know the number one policy I want is universal childcare, and it isn't even close. So you bring something like early childhood education. So you have a concept out there like James Heckman, who have found for every $1 you spend, you'll get back 7. Right. So I don't want to hear anyone that claims to be fiscally conservative who doesn't support universal childcare. It is the single best investment we can make, but it's a hard one. And here's why. Presidents are usually presidents for 4, 8 years, depending on what happens. And so, there are term limits. And so this investment you get typically takes about 20 years. So you got to get ready to do something that you're not going to see the return during your political time, but you just have to do it because it's the right thing to do, because this is how we invest in our people, which our economy is now a people-based economy. It's based on the skill sets of people, and we need to invest most in our people. It starts with early childhood education when children's brains are most malleable. And for every dollar we spend, we're saving 7 on a whole host of things that we don't like to spend money on. So why not just put the dollar in now and we will save the 7?
Mm. All right, sounds like a winner. Give me 2 more things. I'm mean and evil. No one thing here. Give me at least 2 more things.
It's got to be, we need a system for paid leave. I mean, we need to take care of children, not just children, elderly parents. If your spouse gets sick, even if your neighbor gets sick, we need paid leave. And one thing we saw in the pandemic is when you don't give people paid leave, uh, then you are forgetting that we are all connected, right? So you may be in the higher income job, right? And I have paid leave. I think so. Actually, more men have access to paid leave than women. But, and you may think, the burger flipper doesn't have paid leave. Guess who's serving you that burger? The burger flipper. So when that burger flipper doesn't have paid leave and hands you that burger, right, you're interacting with this person who had no choice but to come to work because otherwise they can't feed their own kids. You need paid leave. We are all connected, and paid leave gives people the flexibility when they're sick, have to care for an elderly person, or whatever it is. You need that flexibility. So paid leave would be pretty high up there. And we need to take this out of the hands of employers. This needs to be done by government, right? I don't want employers to have to spend their time. Like if you think about, Bill Gates, whoever, right? Do I want Bill Gates spending his time on figuring out healthcare plans for his people? Not really, right? I want him being Bill Gates and doing tech stuff. Do I want, Bill Gates trying to figure out childcare and paid leave? Actually, not really either. Have the government do it for everyone out there, because especially if you have small businesses who are the most entrepreneurial, especially when we're talking about getting this recovery, we need new ideas. We need these new businesses, but new businesses can't handle healthcare, paid leave, childcare, all of this. It's just too big for those small businesses. It has to be government.
In such a saintly assemblage as this, the devil needs an advocate. And in that case, I shall be the devil's advocate. I am now the voice of Wall Street. Oh, God, heaven help me. I am now the voice of big business, and you guys are going to drive me to the poorhouse. How are we going to support this universal child care? All of these policies that you come up with are going to cripple the economy and stop it from before it even starts. How do you answer that, doctor? And then I'm coming to you, Cecilia.
I mean, our economy's crippled now, right? We can't have people going back to work. We're at the crippled economy because we don't have these policies. So if we want this vibrant economy, we need people to have access to healthcare, access to childcare, access to paid leave. We need them to have access to education. All of these things are what builds a vibrant economy. We've got the crippled economy, and it's right now.
Cecilia, take it
Well,
away.
so we do have some examples in European countries where pay leave is real and happens, and people perform better, the economy is better. I always felt that it would be amazing if we can follow that. However, I do recognize that we have a factor that these countries don't have, which is diversity, and I think that is a huge difference. But I still think that it will help us. We would just have another level of complexity because we have to address every level of our society, and it's more diverse economically, race, gender. I mean, gender, everyone has that.
Well, allow me to rebut my rebuttal. This economy is on fire. We're at 6%. We usually 6% growth. We usually do 2%, and that has been the greatest in the world. But at 6%, and we are possibly going up to 9%. If ever there was a time to do these, it might be now, because you could soak up some of this money that seems to be sloshing around. If ever there was a time for big ideas, that time may be now. So the arguments against the idea of paid leave, against universal child care, against universal health care for that matter, are really falling by the sideline. The economy has moved beyond these arguments, and we have not caught up with them yet. No one really knows where we're going and what we're doing next, but we know that what we should be doing. Now, automation is supposed to have made it easier for us. We're supposed to be working less and having more time with family, etc. So on one hand, we got the women out, but we didn't get the wages up. How long can this go on, Amanda? How long can you keep the women out, the wages up, and the economy growing?
Yeah, so that's an issue. So the problem is our economy grows when we go out and spend our money. And I feel like that's something people don't talk about as much. And what we don't realize is actually women make an estimated 70 to 80% of all household consumption decisions. At 1 year, I even saw a stat
More than that in my house, but go ahead.
I know. So it depends on, even they make more of the car purchases, they make more of the final housing decisions, clothing, you name it, we make more decisions. And so the problem is if we want this vibrant economy, we need to put money in the hands of who? Women. Sorry, men. But yes, we're making these decisions, but that also means we need women in the economy, right? Because if men are making decisions, sorry again, men, but you have a history of not being the best at knowing what women want. Women tend to be a little bit better at knowing what women want. And that's even things like the pandemic did give us a lot of great things. So I finally had like grocery delivery, which is great. But why did it take a pandemic to get my groceries delivered to my house? Right? That is something that I probably could have used, oh, I don't know, like a decade ago, but we got it now. That's fine. I'm happy with this. But we need women in the workforce to do these types of things. And the fact is that when women aren't in the workforce, everyone will be worse off, including men, because we also need to be thinking about long term. What's been happening is growing inequality, which means we have growth without growth. What does that mean? We see GDP going up. We see stock prices going up. Great. We're all doing great, aren't we? No, because with growing inequality, that means as GDP goes up and those stock prices going up, some people are doing great. And those some people, that piece of the pie in terms of percentage of the population is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's an issue and will be an issue for our economy, because then our economy starts to look more like a lottery and less like a fair economic system. So then you have really bad incentives, right? Because if your economy is like a lottery, meaning like, oh, if you go to college, like you might be fine, or you might be in debt until you die, right? So now we have an issue. Do you go to college? And a lot of men, especially right now, are saying no, right? I'm not going to go to college. So we have women outpacing men in terms of college education. And that's a big issue long term for our economy. Our economy can't keep going with a whole lot of facets on. Inequality is one of them. Childcare is another one. Paid leave is another one. We have lots of issues.
Well, is this a big issue in Ohio? I'm not up on my Ohioan yet, but is this a major issue in Ohio?
Absolutely. So we see childcare deserts across the country. We see them in urban areas and we also see them in rural areas. So, one thing that we don't think about is things like universal childcare would help everyone, but it actually would especially help rural areas. So, right
Yes.
now, we're increasingly in an place where you can live wherever you want and work virtually for a lot of people, which means a lot of people might want to live in a rural area where, they're, out in nature and this is very nice and they work virtually, but you still can't work in a rural area if you don't have childcare. So things like universal childcare can help, especially rural areas, even more than urban areas. But we don't often hear about that. So things like childcare deserts, healthcare deserts are affecting Ohioans, from urban to rural suburbs all across. And I hear everything about the suburbs, right? These are the women, especially who, might have the ability because their husbands are higher earners to step back from the workplace. And we often kind of couch it as this, well, they have the ability to because their husbands, are earning more. But what I found is with a lot of suburban women, they're stepping back in the workforce, not because of money, but because of time. Their husband's career has demanded so much more time, and you have childcare on top of that, that there's no space and there's no room for their career. And now you have this whole set of women, urban, suburban, rural, who have really good skills, a lot to offer the economy, but just aren't in the economy because we kind of keep moving the bar and that glass ceiling keeps moving. So the glass ceiling used to be, well, let's get, a PhD or get a college degree. And now it's like, well, that's not good enough. We need you to work 75 hours a week to really, get through that glass ceiling. Women can't do that when they have kids.
Mm. Well, I wanted to point out that you had raised an issue of deliveries of your groceries, and I am actually exploring a way to make sure that lower income people have the same, where the federal program is out there and it's an exploratory mode where people who have what used to be food stamps, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, could use it also, so that all classes can benefit from this initiative, and create more jobs in that sense. I'm concerned, as the unions are, what this will do to grocery stores. You know, are there? I could make an argument that it would help and hurt grocery stores where less people may be in the stores, but more people may be packaging the food and things of that nature. Although that may lend itself towards automation. That part of it may lend itself towards automation. It's a brave new world. We'll have to figure this one out as we go along. But Cecilia, now you're right here. You're in the Big Apple, and you're about to take you another bite of it. What do you want me to do about these things?
Well, I'm very happy
Besides give everybody more money.
to hear you say that you know, poor people, like you're seeing that need of poor people having access to groceries being delivered to their homes. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of families going to schools to get food, and
Yes.
and given, you know, like parents were saying like how little access certain neighborhoods have to healthy foods, and that like on top of food insecurity, and then the poor access you have, or the poor quality of the food that you have access to, um, also has to do with, you know, women as a whole, and like the ability to feeding your family in a certain way and being productive. I think like it's all connected. So I'm very happy to hear that you're thinking that, because then that those deserts and like in terms of childcare also exist in food. So having families have access to food being delivered to their homes, it's very important. And I was also going to mention what Amanda said in terms of the glass ceiling and the economy. Like we have done so much work to get where we are. We're not where we need to be in terms of salaries and like equal pay. But if we as women in any class, but especially well-educated women, then I feel that we're going to regress and like go back to, you know, like they will take us longer to come back, and then we will get paid less than what we are getting paid now or before the pandemic. So that will affect the economy significantly also.
I do want to point out that New York, the Empire State, the bastion of progressive, whatever this week we call it, has not even passed an ERA, Equal Rights Amendment. New York State still has not passed a New York State Equal Rights Amendment. That is absolutely shameful. And we absolutely need to just get out there and do it. And what everything has become democratic with New York State, very similar to what's happening in at the federal level of the three branches. We have the same, except that we are our Congress, our Senate. Well, it's so everything is overwhelmingly Democrat, and yet we have not passed an ERA. Very interesting, this place.
So in answer to your question, Senator, work on those pieces of legislation. And I know you're doing it, and I'm very thankful for that.
No. It's just, this is solidarity. It's beyond things. It's understanding that women hold up half the sky. That, you know, and if the sky hasn't fallen, it's perhaps because women have held up more than half the sky. So it's just a statement, understanding that hey, I win when you win. I'm on the bottom. I'm not in that 1%. So I win when you win. And I wish people would understand that, so that they would not be fighting this stuff. When you want to improve the wages of Black people, you want to improve the economic well-being of Black people, pay women an equal amount, pay Black women what they're supposed to get. You will incredibly increase that. You'll make some amazing steps forward right there. So, often the solution. Hey, you know what? Who said it? Malcolm X actually said it. Malcolm said, anytime you see a place where movement forward has stopped, you need to look and see where women are being held back. And that was Malcolm who said stuff like that. So under those conditions, this is just an act of solidarity. This is an act of understanding my interests. And I am going to raise the issue of ERA. That is just that's just a foundational issue. That's are women equal? Why do we even have this question? Who's on the other side? Who is saying that they're not? What idiot? Well, you can't call them that. Yes, you can. I do. All right, my friends, we have had some fun here. And you're up to, and I'm stalling so that you can get your last thoughts together. You're going to give your last message to the unseen person who, and you know what? Aim it at women. There you go. Aim it at somebody who's not in the economy for whatever reason, and you can give whatever message that you want. I'll go with you first, Dr. Weinstein, because I started with her before, and I'll go with you first. This one is to the women who may be watching and need a word. I love this stuff.
I love the word that you just used, which is solidarity. Yeah. And so a recent author that I read and got to talk to, Heather McGee, wrote The Sum of Us, and she talks about the solidarity dividend, right? And so there she is talking about how we are actually all better off when we have solidarity across races is what she's talking about. And that actually white people are hurt by racism by not having the things that are nice, things like childcare and healthcare, that there's, racism in there. But the same is true with sexism. And there's a solidarity dividend. So when women band together, which I feel right now, we have women like Cecilia, I think of her as like boots on the ground, doing the work, lifting up women, that solidarity. We have people like you, Senator Sanders, right, who are lifting up women. When we have that solidarity, we will see a solidarity dividend, whether that solidarity is across races or it's across women. We are going to see that benefit. And when we think about even something like sexism, right, we often think about it as holding women back, right? But what we see is it actually holds men back too. So men who lose jobs in manufacturing, they're more likely never to get a job again instead of taking that services job, that care job that women do. So that sexism that tells you, you know what, you shouldn't go do that service job. You shouldn't go become a nurse. You shouldn't, whatever that is holding men back in our economy too. So what we can see is there is a solidarity dividend. And I feel that women and men, right, if we can see this, then our whole economy will be better and we can lift women and men up of all races.
Well put it, as well put. Cecilia, bring it on home.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. I feel that solidarity brings me to inclusion, equity, diversity, celebrating all those in our side, intersectionality, which you just mentioned. Like we as women and we as a society working together, like we will all benefit from it, as Amanda said. I see like our messages come out in Black women, not to minimize the needs of all women, all people. But I feel that we've lived through, like the last couple of years, we've lived through times that unfortunate events happen, and we saw the worst of ourselves. And I think we had to take that as an opportunity of seeing the problems more, the many problems that we thought we had overcome still exist, not maybe at the same level, but it is an opportunity to come together and realize that when one of us is suffering. We're all suffering. And I'm going to use the example that Amanda gave earlier. The person who is flipping your burger is also a person who has needs, children, families, a job, and deserved or like rights, benefits that should have. So and we're happy to have anyone who would like to do some of this work. Our organization is volunteer based. So if anyone listening would like to participate in this cause, help women, you're all invited. Look us up, the Center for the Women of New York. We welcome anyone, any person, any woman, any man, any everybody. So thank you so much for having us, and let's all work together. I hope this is not the last conversation about this that we have, and I look forward to doing more of this work. Put our boots on and roll our sleeves and work for our New York City.
I am grateful that both of you have been kind enough to be on the show, but I'm far more grateful that both of you have put your shoulders to the wheel of history and are pushing it in your own way. All of us are connected. Yes, this intersectionality is something we really need to understand more. Now, I'm going to speak to the men watching this show, and I'm going to say, men, brothers, whatever we are, any man born of a woman, that's your first reason why you should make sure that there's equality in pay. It's not coming to your pockets, this money. It's not coming to your family. Your family is being cheated from this. You should make sure that there's justice because you are part of a family, part of a larger whole. We don't benefit from the oppression of women. We simply don't. There's a small handful of people who will, but we don't benefit from the oppression of women. And it's a weak man that needs a weak woman. If you call yourself a strong man, then you should not fear a strong woman. You should be proud of them and rejoice in it. I'm baffled by this foolish idea that somehow we need to walk ahead or do whatever, or we must make a few dollars more. My God, all of us need our monies increased. We all need. Why should you compare yourself who's being exploited with someone being exploited worse than you? Why don't you look at what we all should be getting? There I go thinking again. And that's why this show is Let's Be Clear. And I'm Senator James Sanders Jr. And we don't do anything fuzzy here. You have heard real questions grappled with, and no one tried to hide from anything here. And I'm again grateful to my guest today. And you heard it first. Let's be clear about it. Thank you very much. Take care, Dr. Weinstein. Take care, Cecilia Venosta-Wiygul. Close? Oh, God.
Yes.
I should have stayed awake in class. I should have stayed awake.
Thank you
very much to the both.
That was a lot of fun.
Take care. It was fun.
It was. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.